My name is Rebecca Hart. I'm 42 years old. Last Easter Sunday, my father stood up at our family dinner and announced, "Your kids get nothing. Your brother's boys get it all." I smiled, nodded, and said nothing. On Monday morning, I walked into the Maricopa County Recorder's office and filed one deed change that legally blocked the sale of their $1.2 million retirement home in Scottsdale, Arizona. My phone started ringing at 2:47 p.m. Before I tell you what happened next, please take a moment to like and subscribe if this story resonates with you. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from right now. Let me take you back to November 3rd, 2016. The day my grandmother, Martha Hart, died at age 87 in her home in Tempe, Arizona. She was my father's mother, a woman who'd grown up during the Depression, worked as a bookkeeper for 40 years, and understood the value of every dollar she'd ever earned. She was also the only person in my family who'd ever treated me like I mattered as much as my brother Daniel. I was 34 when Grandma Martha died, recently divorced with two daughters, Emily, who was 6, and Sophie, who was 3. My ex-husband had left me for his dental hygienist 2 years earlier, and I was rebuilding my life from scratch while working as a real estate attorney at a small firm in Phoenix. Daniel was 37, married to Christine, with 2 sons, Brandon, who was 8, and Tyler, who was 5. He worked in pharmaceutical sales, made good money, and had always been my parents' golden child. The son, the one who mattered, the one who carried the Hart family name. I'd known that my entire life, but Grandma Martha had seen it differently. Her funeral was on a Saturday at Desert Hills Memorial Park. The whole family was there: Mom, Dad, Daniel, Christine, the grandkids, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone wearing black and talking about what a wonderful woman she'd been. After the service, her attorney, Lawrence Chen, asked me, Daniel, and my parents to stay for the reading of the will. We gathered in a small conference room at the funeral home. Mr. Chen was 65, gray-haired, and had been Grandma Martha's attorney for 30 years. He opened a folder and began reading. Most of the estate was straightforward. Her house in Tempe would be sold, and the proceeds divided equally between my father and his sister, my Aunt Carol. Her savings account, about $45,000, would be split the same way. Her personal belongings were itemized and distributed among family members. Then Mr. Chen got to a section that made everyone sit up straighter. And to my granddaughter, Rebecca Marie Hart, I leave the following: a life estate interest and right of first refusal in any real property purchased by my son Robert Hart and his wife Linda Hart, using proceeds from the sale of my home or funds derived from my estate. I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" Mr. Chen looked at me over his reading glasses. "Your grandmother has given you a legal interest in any property your parents buy with money from her estate. Specifically, a right of first refusal, which means if they ever decide to sell that property, you have the legal right to purchase it before anyone else. And a life estate interest, which means you have a legal stake in the property for the duration of your life." My father's face was turning red. "What does that mean practically?" "It means, Mr. San," Chen said calmly, "that any property Robert and Linda purchase with Martha's money will have Rebecca's name on the deed as a life estate holder. She doesn't own the property outright, but she has legal rights that must be honored. If you try to sell the property, her interest creates what we call a cloud on the title, which makes the property difficult or impossible to sell without her consent." "That's ridiculous," Daniel said. "Why would Grandma do that?" Mr. Chen pulled out a sealed envelope. "She left a letter explaining her reasoning. Rebecca, this is for you." He handed me the envelope. My name was written on the front in Grandma Martha's shaky handwriting. I opened it carefully. The letter was 1 page, written on her personal stationery. "My dearest Rebecca, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and Larry has just explained the property provision I've included in my will. I imagine your father and brother are confused or angry. Let me explain. I've watched your parents favor Daniel your entire life. I've watched them celebrate his sons while overlooking your beautiful daughters. I've seen the way they dismiss your accomplishments and elevate his mediocre ones. I'm leaving you this legal interest because I know your parents will use my money to buy a retirement home. And I know that when they die, they'll leave everything to Daniel and his sons, and you'll get nothing. This provision ensures that won't happen. They can't sell that property without your consent. They can't cut you out completely. You have power, Rebecca. Use it wisely. I love you, and I'm proud of the woman you've become. Grandma Martha, I read it twice, then folded it and put it back in the envelope. My throat was tight, but I didn't cry. Not in front of my family. What does it say? Dad demanded. It's personal, I said quietly. Rebecca, this is going to complicate things if we ever want to buy a new house, Mom said, her voice taking on that tone she used when she wanted me to be reasonable and accommodating. Then I guess you'll need to keep me informed, I said. Daniel leaned forward. This is manipulative. Grandma was trying to control us from beyond the grave. Grandma was protecting me, I corrected. There's a difference. Mr. Chen cleared his throat. The provision is legal and binding. When Robert and Linda purchase property using Martha's estate funds, Rebecca's interest will be recorded on the deed. That's non-negotiable. My father stood up. We'll see about that. But there was nothing to see about. Grandma Martha had worked with a good attorney, and the provision was ironclad. 6 months later, in May 2017, my parents sold Grandma Martha's house in Tempe for $385,000. Combined with their savings and some of their own retirement funds, they had enough for a down payment on a beautiful retirement home in Scottsdale. The property was at 15247 Desert Vista Drive, a gorgeous 200-square-foot house with mountain views, a pool, and a 3-car garage. They paid $950,000 for it. And per Grandma Martha's will, my name went on the deed. I received the paperwork in the mail in June 2017. The deed listed Robert Hart and Linda Hart as primary owners and Rebecca Marie Hart as life estate holder with right of first refusal. I filed the document in my home office and honestly forgot about it. I was busy building my own law practice. I'd left the firm where I was working and started Hart & Associates Property Law in downtown Phoenix. I was working 60-hour weeks, raising 2 young daughters alone, and trying to establish myself in a competitive field. My parents' retirement home wasn't on my radar. It was just a piece of paper in a filing cabinet. For the next 7 years, life went on. I built my practice into a successful business with 3 associate attorneys and a full support staff. My daughters grew up. Emily started high school. Sophie was thriving in middle school. My parents enjoyed their retirement. Golf, travel, grandkid visits. Well, grandson visits. Brandon and Tyler went to Grandma and Grandpa's house in Scottsdale almost every weekend. They had their own rooms there. Mom and Dad went to every one of their soccer games, every school concert, every birthday party. My daughters? They were invited to Thanksgiving and Christmas. That was it. Why don't Grandma and Grandpa come to my volleyball games? Sophie asked me once when she was 9. They're busy, honey, I said, because what else could I say? Because you're a girl, and girls don't matter in this family? Emily figured it out on her own by age 12. She stopped asking to visit. She stopped expecting birthday cards. She stopped mentioning her grandparents at all. It hurt to watch, but I couldn't force my parents to love their granddaughters the way they loved their grandsons. I focused on giving my girls the best life I could. We took trips to California. We had movie nights. I went to every volleyball game, every piano recital, every parent-teacher conference. I was present in a way my parents had never been for me, and I built my career into something Grandma Martha would have been proud of. By 2024, Hart & Associates was handling major commercial real estate deals, homeowner association disputes, and complex property law cases across Arizona. I was making $180,000 a year and had earned a reputation as one of the best real estate attorneys in Phoenix. Daniel, meanwhile, was still in pharmaceutical sales. He made decent money, but his wife Christine had expensive taste. They lived in a big house in Chandler with a mortgage that probably kept them up at night, drove luxury cars they couldn't quite afford, and posted photos on Facebook that screamed, "We're doing better than we actually are." My parents thought he was wildly successful. They bragged about him constantly. They never mentioned me. Then came Easter Sunday, April 7th, 2024. Mom had invited the whole family to their house in Scottsdale for Easter dinner. The formal dining room table was set with her good china, fresh flowers from the garden, and place cards for everyone. Me, Emily, Sophie, Daniel, Christine, Brandon, Tyler, and my parents at the heads of the table. We'd barely finished the salad course when Dad set down his fork and cleared his throat. Linda and I have been doing some estate planning, he announced. We wanted to share our decisions with the family so there are no surprises later. Mom smiled nervously. She knew what was coming. We've decided, Dad continued, that when we pass the house and the majority of our assets will go to Daniel. He'll manage everything and distribute it to his sons when the time comes. Emily's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Sophie looked at me, confused. Daniel and Christine exchanged satisfied glances. We think it's important, Dad said, that the Hart family wealth stays with the Hart family name. Brandon and Tyler will carry on the family legacy. That's what matters. What about Emily and Sophie? I asked calmly. Dad looked uncomfortable. They'll get married someday. They'll have other families. This is about preserving what we've built for the Hart line. So my daughters get nothing, I said. Not a question. A clarification. They're not Harts, Daniel said, leaning back in his chair. They're going to be someone else's family eventually. Christine nodded. It's just practical, Rebecca. You understand. I looked at my daughters. Emily's face was bright red, her jaw clenched. Sophie's eyes were filling with tears. I looked at my parents. Mom wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad looked almost defiant, like he was daring me to argue. I looked at Daniel, smirking across the table like he'd just won a prize. Then I smiled. Interesting decision, Dad, I said pleasantly. Very interesting. I'm glad you understand, Mom said, relief flooding her voice. We were worried you'd be upset. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said. We finished dinner. I helped clear the plates. I made small talk about the weather. Emily and Sophie were quiet, but they followed my lead. When we left, I hugged my parents goodbye like everything was normal. In the car, Emily exploded. They just said we're worth nothing. They said we don't matter because we're girls. I know, sweetheart. Why didn't you say anything? I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Because sometimes the best response is the one people don't see coming. What does that mean? You'll see, I said. That night, after the girls went to bed, I went into my home office and pulled out a file I hadn't looked at in 7 years. The deed to 15247 Desert Vista Drive, Scottsdale, Arizona. I read through Grandma Martha's provision again. Life estate interest. Right of first refusal. Recorded with the county in June 2017. Then I pulled up the Maricopa County Assessor's website and looked up the current property value, $1.2 million. The house had appreciated $250,000 since my parents bought it. I opened my email and searched for my parents' names. There, buried in an email from 6 months ago that I'd barely skimmed, was a forwarded message from their realtor. They were planning to sell the house. They wanted to downsize, move to a 55-plus community, and pocket the equity to fund more travel. And they were planning to give all of that money to Daniel. I sat back in my chair and stared at Grandma Martha's letter, which I'd kept in the file all these years. You have power, Rebecca. Use it wisely. Monday morning, April 8, 2024. I walked into the Maricopa County Recorder's office at 111 South 3rd Avenue in downtown Phoenix. I brought my paralegal, Julia Martinez, who'd been with me for 5 years and knew me well enough to know when I was planning something. What are we doing here? Julia asked as we took a number and sat in the waiting area. Exercising a legal right, I said. When my number was called, I approached the clerk's window and handed over a notarized document I prepared that morning. I'm filing a notice of intent to exercise right of first refusal, I said. The document stated that I, Rebecca Marie Hart, life estate holder on the property at 15247 Desert Vista Drive, Scottsdale, Arizona, was formally notifying the primary deed holders, Robert and Linda Hart, that I was aware of their intent to sell and was exercising my legal right to be the first potential buyer. The filing also included a formal request that no sale proceed without my written consent. The clerk processed the paperwork and stamped it. The document was now part of the public record, attached to the property deed. "What does this do?" Julia asked as we walked back to the car. "It creates a cloud on the title," I said. "The property can't be sold with a clear title until my interest is resolved. Any title company will flag it immediately. So your parents can't sell their house? Not without dealing with me first." Julia grinned. "Your grandmother was a genius." Yes, she was. I went back to my office and worked through the rest of the day. Normal client meetings, contract reviews, phone calls. I didn't think about the deed filing. At 2:47 p.m., my phone rang. Dad. I let it go to voicemail. At 2:51 p.m., Mom called. Voicemail. At 3:01 p.m., Daniel called. Voicemail. At 3:15 p.m., a number I didn't recognize. Probably their realtor. Voicemail. At 3:30 p.m., Julia knocked on my office door. "Your father is calling the main office line. Tell him I'm with a client." At 4 p.m., I listened to the voicemails. Dad's message was barely controlled rage. "Rebecca, what the hell did you do? The realtor just called and said there's a problem with the title. Call me immediately." Mom's message was panicked. "Honey, please call us back. There's been some kind of mistake with the house sale. We need to talk to you." Daniel's message was pure venom. "This is low, even for you. Call Dad back and fix whatever you did." The realtor's message was professional confusion. "Ms. Hart, this is Denise Crawford from Sonoran Realty. I'm handling the sale of your parents' home, and the title company has flagged an issue with the deed. There's a life estate interest in your name that's blocking the sale. Can you please call me to discuss?" I called Denise back at 4:30 p.m. "Ms. Crawford, this is Rebecca Hart." "Oh, thank goodness." "Ms. Hart, I'm a bit confused. The title report shows you have a life estate and right of first refusal on your parents' property. They didn't mention this when they listed the house." "I'm sure they didn't." "Well, we have buyers under contract and they're scheduled to close in 3 weeks. But the title company won't issue a clear title with your interest on the deed. We need you to sign a release." "I'm not signing a release." "I'm sorry. I'm exercising my right of first refusal. If my parents want to sell that house, I'm the first buyer. That's what the deed says." There was a long pause. "Mrs. Hart, do you intend to purchase the property?" "I'm considering it. The contract price is $1.19 million. I'm aware of the property value. I'll need time to make my decision." "How much time?" "Arizona law doesn't specify a deadline for right of first refusal unless one was written into the original deed provision. Since there wasn't, I have a reasonable amount of time. Let's say 60 days. 60 days? Miss Hart, the buyers will walk. Your parents will lose this sale. Then I guess my parents should have told you about my interest before listing the property." "Miss Hart, I'm a real estate attorney, Ms. Crawford. I know my rights. If you'd like to discuss this further, you can contact my office during business hours." I hung up. My phone rang again immediately. "Dad." I answered this time. "What did you do?" he shouted. "I exercised a legal right that Grandma Martha gave me 8 years ago. You're blocking the sale of our house. Technically, I'm exercising my right of first refusal. If you want to sell, I get first option to buy. You can't afford this house." "Actually, Dad, I can. I make $180,000 a year. I have excellent credit, and I could secure financing tomorrow if I wanted to." "This is insane. Why are you doing this?" I took a breath. "You announced yesterday that my daughters, your granddaughters, are getting nothing when you die. You're leaving everything to Daniel's boys because they're the ones who matter. Did you think that wouldn't have consequences? That's a separate issue." "No, Dad, it's the same issue. You've spent my entire life making it clear that I don't matter as much as Daniel, that my children don't matter as much as his children. Grandma Martha saw that, and she made sure I'd have some leverage when you inevitably tried to cut me out completely." "We're not cutting you out. You announced at Easter dinner that my kids get nothing. Those were your exact words. We're leaving the estate to Daniel to manage, which means you're leaving it to Daniel, period. You think he's going to share with me? With Emily and Sophie. Silence. Here's what's going to happen, Dad. You're going to sit down with Mom and Daniel, and you're going to rethink your estate plan. And if you come up with something that treats all 4 of your grandchildren fairly, I'll consider signing a release on the house. You're blackmailing us. I'm negotiating. There's a difference. I'm calling a lawyer. You should. Make sure they specialize in property law. I can recommend a few colleagues if you'd like. He hung up. 10 minutes later, Daniel called. You're really going to screw over Mom and Dad because your feelings got hurt? My feelings didn't get hurt, Daniel. My daughters were told to their faces that they're worthless to this family. Nobody said they're worthless. Dad said they get nothing. That's the definition of worthless in an inheritance context. You know what I mean. This is about the family name. It's about sexism, Daniel. It's about the fact that you've been favored your entire life because you're a boy. Your sons get everything because they're boys. My daughters get nothing because they're girls. Grandma Martha knew exactly what she was doing when she put that provision in her will. You're being vindictive. I'm being strategic. Grandma Martha taught me well. Mom's crying. You know that? Mom's been crying for 40 years about things that don't actually matter. She cried when I got divorced. She cried when I started my own law firm instead of working for someone else. She cries when things don't go according to her perfect family script. I'm done managing her emotions. Dad's talking about contesting Grandma's will. The statute of limitations on will contests in Arizona is 2 years after probate closes. Grandma died in 2016. He's about 6 years too late. Daniel was quiet for a moment. How long have you been planning this? I haven't been planning anything. I've been living my life, but when you people announced you were cutting out my daughters, I remembered that I actually have some power in this situation, so I'm using it. What do you want? I want my daughters to matter. I want them to be treated like they're just as important as your sons. I want an estate plan that doesn't erase them because of their gender. And if we do that, then we can talk about the house. I hung up. That night, Emily asked me what was happening. Grandma and Grandpa are learning an important lesson, I said. What lesson? That you don't get to treat people like they're worthless and then expect them to cooperate when you need something. Sophie, who was listening from the hallway, came into the kitchen. Are we really not getting anything when Grandpa and Grandpa die? I pulled both my daughters into a hug. You're getting something much more valuable than money, I said. You're learning that you don't accept being treated as less than. You don't smile and nod when someone tells you you're not good enough. And you definitely don't let people walk all over you just because they're family. But the house is leverage. Grandma Martha was smart enough to give me a tool I could use if I ever needed it. And right now, I need it. Are you going to buy their house? Emily asked. Maybe. Or maybe I'll just make them wait until they're willing to be fair. Over the next 2 weeks, my parents tried everything. They had their realtor call me repeatedly. I didn't return the calls. They had their attorney send me a letter demanding I release my interest. I sent back a letter explaining that my interest was valid and legally recorded, and I had no obligation to release it. They tried to go around me and close the sale anyway. The title company refused to issue title insurance with a cloud on the deed. The buyers walked. Mom called me crying. Rebecca, please. We'd lost the sale. We needed that money. For what? For retirement. For travel. For giving to Daniel and his sons while my daughters get nothing? She was quiet. Mom, I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this because you hurt my children. And me. And you didn't even realize it because you're so wrapped up in Daniel and his boys that you can't see anyone else. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. When was the last time you went to one of Sophie's volleyball games? Silence. When was the last time you called Emily just to talk? More silence. You go to Brandon and Tyler's games every week. You call Daniel constantly. You post photos of his boys on Facebook like they're the only grandchildren you have. My girls see all of that, Mom. They know they don't matter to you. We love them. You love the idea of them. But you don't show up for them. And now you want to cut them out of the inheritance entirely. And you expect me to just smile and cooperate. What do you want us to do? I want you to see all 4 of your grandchildren as equally valuable. I want an estate plan that reflects that. And I want you to actually be present in Emily and Sophie's lives, not just at Christmas and Thanksgiving. And if we do that, then we can talk about the house. 3 weeks later, my parents invited me to lunch at their house in Scottsdale. Just me. No Daniel, no Christine, no kids. I drove out there on a Saturday morning, May 4th, 2024. The house was beautiful as always. The desert landscaping was immaculate. The pool sparkled in the Arizona sun. Mom answered the door. She looked tired. "Hi, honey." "Hi, Mom." Dad was sitting in the living room. He looked older than I remembered. We sat down at the kitchen table, the same place they'd probably planned the estate announcement that started all of this. Dad slid a folder across the table. We had our attorney draft a new estate plan. I opened it and read through the documents. Trust agreement, will, beneficiary designations. The estate was now divided equally among all 4 grandchildren: Brandon, Tyler, Emily, and Sophie. Each would receive 25% of the assets when my parents died. The house would be sold upon their deaths and the proceeds split 4 ways. There was also a separate provision, an education trust of $50,000 for each grandchild, accessible at age 18 for college expenses. "This is fair," I said. "We're also establishing a new tradition," Mom said quietly. "One weekend a month, we want Emily and Sophie to come stay with us. We'll go to their games and recitals. We'll be present." "Why now?" I asked. "Why not 10 years ago?" Dad rubbed his face. "Because we didn't see it. We didn't see what we were doing. We thought boys were more important for carrying on the family. We thought you'd understand because you'd get married again someday and have a husband to take care of you." "I don't need a husband to take care of me, Dad. I take care of myself." "I know that now," he said quietly. "Do you? Because 2 months ago you were ready to give Daniel everything and leave me with nothing." "We were wrong," Mom said, and she was crying again, but this time it felt different. "We were so wrong, Rebecca, and it took you blocking the house sale for us to see it." I looked at both of them. These were my parents. Flawed, biased, stuck in outdated thinking. But they were here trying. "If I sign the release on the house," I said, "and you sell it, what happens to the money?" "We'll downsize to a smaller place," Dad said. "The rest goes into the trust for the grandkids and our retirement account. We're not giving Daniel a lump sum." "And you'll actually show up for Emily and Sophie?" "We will," Mom promised. I pulled out a document I'd brought with me, a release of right of first refusal, prepared and ready to sign. "This release is conditional," I said. "If you violate the terms of the new estate plan, if you revert to the old version, if you start favoring the boys again, my interest in any property you own reinstates automatically. I'm having that written into the deed." "That's fair," Dad said. I signed the release. Mom witnessed it. Dad notarized it. He'd maintained his notary license from his insurance days. "There's one more thing," I said. "I want an apology. To Emily and Sophie, in person. For what you said at Easter dinner." Mom nodded. "Of course. And I want you to explain to them why you were wrong. Not just that you were wrong, but why. They need to hear that they matter and that being girls doesn't make them less valuable." "We'll do it," Dad said. 2 weeks later, my parents came to my house for dinner. I cooked, which I rarely do, but this felt like an occasion that needed a home-cooked meal. Emily and Sophie were nervous. They didn't know what to expect. After dinner, we all sat in the living room. My parents sat on the couch. The girls sat in chairs across from them. I stood in the doorway watching. "Emily, Sophie," Dad said, and his voice was rough. "We owe you an apology. At Easter, we said something that was hurtful and wrong. We said that you wouldn't be part of the family inheritance because you're girls. That was wrong. You are just as much a part of this family as your cousins. You matter just as much. And we're sorry we ever made you feel otherwise. Sophie was staring at her hands. Emily looked directly at him. Why did you say it in the first place? Dad looked uncomfortable. Because I grew up believing that boys were more important for carrying on the family name and legacy. I was wrong. Your mom raised you, built a successful career, and you girls are brilliant and strong. The Hart family legacy isn't about a name. It's about the people. And that includes you. Mom reached out and took Sophie's hand. We want to be better grandparents. We want to come to your games and recitals. We want to spend time with you. We've missed so much, and that's our fault, not yours. Sophie started crying. Emily's jaw was clenched, but I saw her eyes getting wet. We set up education trusts for both of you, Dad continued. 50,000 each for college. And when we're gone, you and your cousins will inherit equally. We've changed everything to make sure you're treated fairly. Emily looked at me. I nodded. Okay, she said quietly. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a Hollywood ending where everyone hugged and cried and all the damage was instantly healed. But it was a start. My parents left an hour later. They hugged the girls goodbye, awkward, unpracticed hugs, but real ones. After they left, Emily came and sat next to me on the couch. Did you really stop them from selling their house? I exercised a legal right that your great-grandmother gave me. That's pretty badass, Mom. I laughed. Don't tell your teachers I let you say badass. Grandma Martha sounds like she was cool. She was the coolest person I knew. Sophie climbed onto my other side. Are they really going to come to my games? We'll see. But if they don't, you've still got me. You always come to everything. And I always will. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my office on a Thursday afternoon, reviewing a commercial property contract when Julia knocks on my door. Your mom's online too. I pick up. Hi, Mom. Hi, honey. I'm calling to confirm we're picking up the girls tomorrow night for the weekend, right? Right. Sophie has a volleyball tournament Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Emily has a piano recital Saturday evening at 6 p.m. We'll be at both. Your father already blocked out the whole weekend. Okay. Rebecca? Yeah? Thank you for not giving up on us. I think about Grandma Martha sitting in an attorney's office in 2016, writing a provision into her will that would give me leverage 8 years later. Thank you for finally showing up, I say. After I hang up, I open my desk drawer and pull out Grandma Martha's letter, which I keep here now instead of in the file cabinet. You have power, Rebecca. Use it wisely. I did, Grandma. I really did. My parents sold their house in Scottsdale 3 months ago for a $1.18 million. They bought a smaller house in a 55-plus community in Surprise, Arizona. The equity from the sale went into trust accounts for all 4 grandchildren and their retirement fund. Daniel barely speaks to me. Christine unfriended me on Facebook. I'm not losing sleep over it. My daughters are thriving. Emily is applying to colleges. Sophie made varsity volleyball as a freshman. And they have grandparents who actually show up now, not perfectly, not consistently enough yet, but they're trying. I still practice real estate law. I still specialize in property disputes and deed issues. And I tell every young woman who comes through my office the same thing. Document everything. Understand your legal rights. And never, ever assume that family will do the right thing just because they're family. Sometimes you have to force them to see you. Sometimes you have to use the law to make them treat you fairly. And sometimes the grandmother who understood exactly what you'd face leaves you a gift that doesn't look valuable until the moment you need it most. Grandma Martha knew my parents would favor Daniel. She knew they'd favor his sons. She knew I'd be overlooked, dismissed, and eventually cut out entirely. So she gave me a weapon disguised as a property clause. And when I needed it, it worked perfectly. If you've ever been written out of a family inheritance because of your gender, if you've ever watched your siblings get everything while you got nothing, if you've ever been the daughter who didn't matter as much as the son, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below. And if someone in your family ever left you something that seemed small but turned out to be powerful, tell me about that too. Subscribe if you want more stories about overlooked daughters who refuse to stay invisible. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. What would you have done in my position? Would you have blocked the sale or would you have walked away from the whole family? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for being here. And remember, document your rights, know your worth, and never let anyone make you feel like you matter less because of your gender. Your grandmother might be watching, and she might have left you more power than you realize. End.